Hello and welcome back to 1874. It's time for a post-match reaction show, full time, as Villa lost 1-0 to Club Brugge, or Bruges, whatever you call them, in the Champions League group stage last night. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by Sky Sports News' David Reid, also a Villa fan, to discuss the game last night. This show is sponsored by Luke Roper, and if you want to use our code and get 20% off, the code is TVV20. Right then, David. Disappointing night. There's not too many times in the Unai Emery era where I've just felt like we aren't going to score a goal. We don't look like we're going to score at all. In fact, there's not been too many games where we haven't scored a goal. But last night was one of those. And there needs to be a bit of perspective, really. You know, a few years ago, we were getting upset about losing games in the Championship. We're now getting upset about losing our first game in the Champions League 4 games in. But it's pretty fair to say that last night was a little bit of a painful watch.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. Yeah, it was. I thought the first half was okay, and then second half, I expected us to have a little bit more impetus, and it seemed like things just went backwards a little bit in the second half. And it was a really poor second half. And I think usually when you come out of these games and there's a strange, bizarre refereeing decision, a lot of people will just focus on that and say, maybe the national media will focus on that and be like, Villa have been done by a strange, bizarre decision. But I think for a lot of supporters, they've kind of taken a step back from that refereeing decision and looked at the bigger picture stuff, the performance as a whole, and what's kind of happened over the last 2-3 weeks in terms of performances and results. So, yeah, I think it was a poor second half in particular, and you're right. I didn't think we were looking like we were ever going to score on the night.
Yeah, we're not quite there at the moment, are we? It's very stodgy. What I've watched over the last week, I would say, because I still maintain that Bournemouth at home, Villa played well. I thought we were good that day, and we got undone by a late set piece, which can happen. We've seen it happen to teams before. But I do think at the moment, I'm not singling anyone out or digging any players, because I don't want to dig the players because they're fantastic and they've been fantastic for 2 years. And I'm certainly not going to dig out the manager who's completely transformed this football club. But I do think it's fair to say at the moment, there's not too many players that are playing to their absolute best level. And if you've got a number of players who dropped off at the same time, results and performances are probably going to reflect that. And I do think, particularly kind of like in the forward and kind of wide midfield areas at the moment, there's too many that aren't playing at their absolute best level or even close to their best level at times.
Yeah, I think that's mostly fair. I think I always kind of think when you lose a game and it's maybe 1 or 2 players that haven't looked at it or at the required level, I think you can kind of put that down to variations in form and fitness. But I think when it's maybe 5 or 6 that haven't performed quite well enough in the game, I sometimes would look a little bit wider than that and go, was the preparation right? Was the setup, the tactical setup right? Did we respond well enough to what they were doing in the game? And Villa aren't a club that can go to particularly away games in Europe, and if 5 or 6 players aren't perhaps at their best level, then that Villa don't have the quality of player to carry a result through the game.
Yeah, just again, I'm not singling people out at all here, because I love all these players, but I just look at those wide forward areas, in particular the players that come in to make the box and the players that provide the width when they're playing wide. So Bailey, Ramsey, McGinn, love them all, but none of them are at their best level at the moment. It feels a little bit like, you're going to have to make changes because you have to rotate. We've got a lot of games, but it feels like whoever we put there at the moment isn't at their best. I'm waiting for Bailey to take off. I think we're really missing the Bailey of last season. He doesn't look fully fit. I think he's trying to play his way into form. I think Emery's trying to play him into form as well. But me and Jacob spoke about it on the preview. I'm not saying we shouldn't have sold DR, because I agree with it. But when you take out his goals and assists, Bailey's goals and assists aren't really there at the moment. Ramsey from the season before last, when he was fit, his goals and assists aren't there either. It's not just in terms of form and what you're seeing on the eye test, but the actual numbers have gone. And, we're not Watkins wasn't there last night either. I would say his touch seemed to have completely deserted him last night. So with those midfield players I've just mentioned in particular, the kind of productivity isn't there either.
Yeah, I think Villa are just trying to find the right mix of players in those forward areas at the moment, I would say. And yeah, I think Bailey's an interesting one because, I mean, first of all, credit to Bruges, who I thought were really good last
Yeah,
night,
they were.
and they blocked out the middle of the pitch. They transitioned really well, and I think for them, they played very well. And I think they fully deserved the victory. I would say by the end of the night. But I think when clubs play against Villa and block out the middle of the pitch, Bailey offered that bit of variation last season where you could give him the ball and he would take one, sometimes maybe two players out of the game with a little touch or a little bit of skill, and he would deliver then into the box either the cross or the cutback. And the fact that he's kind of he was struggling last night for form, and he offered that little bit of variation last season out wide. And when he's unable to reproduce that kind of form, Villa looked just a little bit one-dimensional, I thought, in that second half, and they struggled to really find a way through. And the crossing last night was very poor. I think there was 10 crosses in the second half, and maybe only one reached its destination.
Second half was bad.
So I think when things aren't working out wide and teams block out the middle of the pitch, I think Villa have maybe got a bit of a problem on that front. When you talk about Ramsey, I think I think he's a fantastic player with fantastic potential. It feels to me like he's just waiting for a moment. He's just waiting for a moment for things to click for him. He's showing signs of getting back to that player that we've seen previously. And I think for me, it just feels like he's waiting for that, or the supporters are waiting for that moment for him where things click into place and he gets up and running. And you're right in terms of the way Villa play. The two pivots in midfield, their job isn't to kind of crash the box and make runs into the final third. Their job is to deliver the ball into the 2 10s or the wide players or the striker, and then it's their job to almost do the business from there. And then the two pivot players station themselves on the edge of the opposition box to pick up various things and can play and recycle the ball. So when those front players aren't working to their full potential and the opposition block out the middle of the pitch, I do think Villa looks slightly one-dimensional. They certainly did last night.
Yeah, we've got TJ in the comments here. I don't think that's Tom Julian. Kind of referencing the slow play, and I thought that in the first half, and it carried on into the second half. Is that slow the game down at the wrong times? At the moment when you think we're going to start to carry the ball forward, we kind of slow it down and make a safe pass. But then saying that, you do have to look after the ball, and generally, I don't think again that we looked after the ball very well last night.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that is that if Villa slow the game down, win 1-0, you kind of look at it and go, what a mature performance in Europe. They've managed that game so well. But when it goes the other way, you're kind of thinking, well, maybe they could have switched it up and injected a little bit of pace into the game. So I'm not, that's something for me that I don't tend to look at and think, well, maybe they could have done something different. And I think on another day, you walk away from that game with a 0-0 and you go, Villa didn't play that well. They've got a point, another clean sheet, and you move on. It's the fact that they've conceded that goal, the weird goal, that you look at the complexion of the game totally differently.
I mean, we can celebrate the fact we still haven't conceded a goal from open play in the Champions League. Now we're going to have to change it to that. But obviously, it's hugely disappointing to win the game. Well, not to win the game, sorry. We'll obviously come on to the penalty shortly. What did you make of the team selection? Because I was okay with that team. I quite liked the look of it. Jacob referenced in the preview, the midweek games quite a lot of the time last season he didn't play. Pau Torres kept him for the Premier League. I had no problem with Mings coming in last night, bar the obvious. Don't think he did much wrong at all. Good to see him back in. Maatsen seems to now be the Champions League left back over the last couple of games. And Arna sat this one out and Kamara came in, and I thought Kamara was probably Villa's best player on the night, which is good to see him feeling his way back in. But did you have any problems with the team selection? Because I thought it was still a strong side, but we maybe do miss Pau Torres' passing when he's not there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I didn't have any particular problems with the starting 11. I think the only thing that's almost in the back of your mind is if Villa had beaten Palace in the Carabao Cup and still had midweek games to come, would he have decided to rotate at the back and play Tyrone Mings in the Champions League yesterday, or would he have thought, well, he's going to get minutes elsewhere, so do I need to put him in this scenario? And potentially, you know, if he's thinking you win against Bruges and your last couple of games in the Champions League, you might already have secured your top 8, and then you can think about rotating players. So, but on the whole, no, didn't have any issues with Tyrone Mings starting whatsoever. I think, you know, he deserves to play Champions League football. What a player he has been for Aston Villa, and it's hard to judge him. Well, you can't judge him. I would say nobody judge him on how he's getting on right now, because he's been out for so long. You can't tell what sort of level he's going to get to and get back to. I thought he did fine. I thought he did okay. You know, obviously bar the strange issue we had with the penalty, but I thought he did fine. And yeah, I didn't have too many issues with the starting 11. He's kind of hamstrung at right back with Matty Cash and his injury. And yeah, I mean, I thought Onana might come on in the second half, particularly towards the end of the game, as a bit more of a physical presence. And I thought Kamara played very well, but I did think towards the end he looked a little bit tired, as you would expect. So I thought Onana might have come on. But no issues with the team whatsoever, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the next person that gets put forward for a Champions League press conference is going to think, oh, I'm not playing, because that's 2 in a row who've been put forward for the press conference in Matty Cash and Amadou Onana, and neither of them have started the game that they're going to the press conference to talk about. Let's talk about the penalty then. Look, Tyrone Mings is obviously going to be getting stick on social media, and he has been. I put my tweets out at the time, like everyone else put their opinion out at the time with that penalty decision. I understand that by the letter of the law, it probably is a penalty, but there's also just a complete lack of common sense. I don't know whether the rules changed off the back of that Arsenal Bayern Munich decision last season, where the referee kind of said, that's schoolboy stuff, I can't give that. The referee did kind of feel like he wanted to be the superstar in the game, wanted to see his name in the papers the next day. It did feel a little bit like that to me. There's no world in which Tyrone Mings thinks, if I pick this up, it's going to be a penalty, because but he's not really looking, is he? Martinez has kicked it. Mings isn't looking. If he thinks there's any danger of there being a penalty, he doesn't pick it up. It's quite that simple. So he must have just thought he's okay to do it. Obviously, he wasn't. The referee's made an example out of him, and it's been given as a pen. What's your take on it?
My take is I do not like it whatsoever.
But you're saying that because you're a Villa fan, or are you just saying that generally? If it had been given last season, Arsenal Bayern Munich, would you have said the same thing?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And Thomas Tuchel said, you're right, after the game, that the referee told him that he doesn't want to give a penalty for a kid's mistake. And I'm sorry, but if that referee, or this game last night was the final of the Champions League, you cannot have big games or games being decided by that. I'm sorry, it's not acceptable whatsoever at the top level. Like, there's no way that you can give a penalty for that kind of thing. I'm just not having it at all. I'm really not. You can't. Like I say, I just don't think he would give a penalty like that if it was the final, if it was the Champions League final, and have a major game decided by that sort of thing. And the VAR is never going to overturn it, because the referee has seen what he's seen, but it's fairly obvious, and you've stated it, and there's nothing more to add really, that Tyrone Mings did not know that Martinez had taken the goal kick. I assume he thought that Martinez had just rolled it to him in order to take the goal kick himself, or that he'd kicked it to him from behind the touchline, so it was not in play. Look, I just don't want to see penalties given for that. It's just not acceptable. I really don't. And you're right, the referee felt to me like he wanted to be centre of attention for that, and you thought Villa were going to get better officials in the Champions League compared to the Conference League, but
I think they have, in fairness, until this one.
Not last night. Last night.
I mean, part of me does think Martinez might have been taking it as a goal kick. Part of me does think that, but then also Mings isn't looking. Martinez is very switched on. So I think, would he take a goal kick to someone who's not looking? And Martinez was arguing with the ref at the end of the game. I just think it's one of these again, and we say it time after time with the officiating and VAR. If the ref doesn't blow his whistle and Ming just picks the ball up, puts it down, and takes the goal kick, VAR aren't going to say to the ref, "Oh, you've got to go back and look at that. That's a potential handball there," and that's where it just all falls down with the officiating and VAR for me, because it all depends so much on like the series of events and how it happens in terms of the referee making the call or the referee doesn't make the call, and then that dictates what VAR do. That isn't how it's supposed to work, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think people, people in the comments are saying that it is a penalty. I think that we are in agreement with that. By the letter of the law, it is a penalty. What I'm saying is I don't want to see penalties given for that. I just think it's unacceptable. That's what I'm trying to get at. Yes, as you say, the letter of the law, it is a penalty, but I don't think you can decide major football games at the top level of European football by that sort of decision. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, it's a bit of a joke. You say what I'm saying about the series of events with VAR. Like they're just if the ref doesn't blow his whistle, if the ref's got his back to the game, which he probably wouldn't have, they're not going to say, "Oh, the ref wasn't looking. We need to go back and have a look at that and give it as a penalty." They're just going to let the game carry on, let the game flow. And I do think after that, obviously, I'm not saying we were playing brilliantly anyway, but I do think we were better in the first half than the second. I do think that just completely shell shocked us, and I don't think we recovered from it at all. Not saying we're playing well at the moment, because the last couple of games you would say we're not, but I do think that decision then impacted the rest of the game as well.
Yeah, I think it did impact the rest of the game. I think it impacted Unai Emery, because I don't think he sat down, and the camera kept cutting to him on the feed where he was just screaming at everybody, his own players, the officials, everyone. He was screaming, so it certainly had an effect on him. And if anything, that decision in that game last night will have lit a fire under Unai Emery to correct the things that have not gone his way over the last couple of weeks, for sure, I think.
Yeah, just to finish, Scotto is saying the ref did his job, no different to awarding a corner or a throw-in, all on Mings, unfortunately. And Tyrone Mings ultimately will probably hold his hands up and take responsibility for it, because he's that kind of guy. If that happens in the middle of the pitch and it's not a goalkeeper and someone kicks the ball to someone for the free kick and they're not looking, and they pick it up and take it back, again, I don't think the referee does anything. I just think the game carries on. So in a way, I don't think it should be any different in the penalty area, Dave.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I agree. Not many people agreeing with us in the comments. I guess that's football, right? We do need to shoot. Just wanted to get a show out this morning. Dave and I will be back to do a preview at some point ahead of the Liverpool game. That game I feel we could do without at the moment. So either today or tomorrow, Dave and I will jump on and do a match preview as well. So thank you very much to Dave for joining me today. Thanks for those that have joined us live, and thank you to Luke Roper for continuing to sponsor. Use the code TVV20 and you'll get 20% off everything that they have to offer. Keep your eye on our socials for the preview. Do all the things that I ask you to do every single video. I don't even need to say them anymore because everyone knows what they are. Have a brilliant